Hello everyone, hope you're doing well, and today we are going to discuss Active Directory group types and group scopes. So let's see what we have today. Today we'll have a look at what are groups, we'll look at the purpose of groups in Active Directory, we'll understand the types of groups in Active Directory, and we'll understand the scope of every group in the world of Active Directory. So let's get started. So what are groups in Active Directory? So the Active Directory groups are collection of Active Directory objects. The group can include users, computers, other groups, and other AD objects. Now the administrators manage these groups as a single object. Now let us see the purpose of groups, why we require groups or why to use groups. Now to make it easier for administrators to share permissions to groups instead of an individual user or a computer. So we'll create a group of users and give the permissions to that particular group instead of giving permissions to a single user or a computer. Assigning permissions to a group implies that all members of that group will have similar access to the shared resources. Now, Active Directory helps enforce policies and permissions at different level of security purposes. So thus, it's highly secured and has a layered security system. Users, computers, and resources can be, located anywhere, yet Active Directory can access domain resources more securely. So these are some of the reasons why we need to use groups. So it is one of the easy and efficient mechanism to locate objects and generate, email distribution lists. And working with groups helps simplify network maintenance and administration. Now let us look at the group types in Active Directory. So there are two types of groups in Active Directory, namely security group and distribution group. So this is the picture. We have two types, security group and distribution group. So security groups are used to provide access to resources. So the main purpose is assign user rights and assign permissions to resources. This is the main purpose of a security group. Distribution groups are used to create email distribution list. So an email sent to such a group is reached to all the recipients of that particular group. And this type of group cannot be used to provide access to domain resources because they are not security enabled. Distribution groups are only created for email distribution only. They are not meant to assign permissions. So let us understand group scope in the world of Active Directory. Now what do you mean by the term scope? Nothing but boundary or border, you can say limit, margin, frontier, whatever. So let's take it's a border, or the scope refers to the term as a border or boundary. So there are three scopes for each group in Active Directory: domain local, global, and universal. So there are three scopes for each group type in the world of Active Directory: domain local, global, and universal. So let's have a look at all the three of them one by one. So it's somewhat like this. So we have two types, security and distribution, and group scopes. We have three scopes: domain local, global, and universal. So let us understand domain local scope or the boundary. So it is limited to its own domain, means it cannot cross the boundaries of its domain. It cannot go outside its own domain and say get access. So objects from the same domain can be the member of a domain local group. Global groups from its own domain can be the member of domain local group, and universal groups as well from say any domain can be the member of the domain local group. Now the main purpose of the domain local scope, okay, is to assign permissions to local resources. So let's take an example over here. So we have two domains, contoso.com and east.contoso.com, and we have a group over here, ny users, and the scope of the group is domain local. And if we want to take this group outside its say boundaries, contoso.com, we won't be able to take it because the scope is domain local, so it cannot cross the boundaries of its domain. So this is the domain local scope. Let us go ahead and understand global scope now. So the scope for the domain, say the global group is entire forest, so it can move around the entire forest, means it can cross the boundaries of its domain and can be a member of a domain local group or a universal group in any other domain. Now the only say gotcha or caveat over here is in this group you can add accounts and other global groups from the same domain only in which the group was created. So you cannot add say users from any other domain in this particular group. You can add only users and global groups from the same domain in which this group was created. So let us take an example of say global scope. Let's say we have two domains, contoso.com and east.contoso.com. Now we have a shared folder HR data in east.contoso.com, and there are three users, Martha, Gloria and Amanda, who want to access this HR data folder which is in east.contoso.com. Now Amanda, Gloria and Martha are the users in contoso.com domain. So as an administrator, what we will do over here, how we will grant permissions to this HR data folders to say Martha, Gloria and Amanda. So let's check it out. So we'll create a security group with global scope named Contoso HR in contoso.com domain. And after that we'll add Martha, Gloria and Amanda as the member of this Contoso HR group. Then we'll create another group named HR in east.contoso.com domain. The type would be security, but this time the scope would be domain local. So now we have two groups, Contoso HR with global scope in contoso.com, and the members of this Contoso HR group are Martha, Gloria and Amanda. And we have created one more group, HR with domain local scope and type is security in east.contoso.com. Now if you see over here, the resource is in east.contoso.com. That's the reason we are creating a domain local group in east.contoso.com. Now our next step would be to add Contoso HR group as a member of the HR group on east.contoso.com. So this is called as group nesting. So we are nesting Contoso HR as a member of HR group in east.contoso.com. And then we will say assign permissions to this HR group on this HR HR data folder on this HR data group. So we will assign permissions to this HR data folder, and the permissions can be read, full or modify. And after assigning the permissions, these three ladies, Martha, Gloria and Amanda, would be able to access HR data folder. So this strategy is called as AGDLP. So accounts goes to global group, global groups are added in domain local groups, and permissions are assigned to domain local groups. So we are going to discuss the group nesting and group nesting strategies in our upcoming videos. So let us understand universal scope now. Again, the scope of the universal group is entire forest. It can move in anywhere in any domain in the forest. So in this group, we can add accounts from any domain. Using this, say, group scope, we can define roles and manage resources that are distributed across multiple domains. And we must know that universal groups are published in our global catalogs. So we have seen what global catalog is in our earlier videos. So let's take an example of universal group, where to use universal group. So we have our forest contoso.com, and we have three domains: west.contoso.com, contoso.com and east.contoso.com. And there are some users over here. In west.contoso.com we have Peter, Alex, Amanda. In contoso.com we have William, Andrew and Tony. And in east.contoso.com we have Barry and Brian. Now we have two shared folders: HR reports, which is present in west.contoso.com, and HR data, which is present in east.contoso.com. Now all these, say, 8 users want to access both the folders now. Now in this example, we can see that the resources are distributed. It's not in the same domain. It's in, say, more than one domain. So how to achieve this, say, goal? So our target is, we must grant permissions to all the 8 users to HR reports and HR data folder. So what we'll do is, we'll create global groups in every domain, and we'll add the users from their respective domains in that particular global group. For example, we'll add Peter, Alex and Amanda in the global group which we created in west.contoso.com. We will add William, Andrew and Tony in the global group in contoso.com, and we'll add Barry and Brian as the member of the global group in east.contoso.com. The next step would be, we will create a universal group in contoso.com. And we need to create domain local groups in the domain in which we have the resources. So we have resources in east.contoso.com and west.contoso.com. Now let's see how permissions are assigned. Okay. So what we'll do is, we will add all the global groups as a member of universal group which is present in contoso.com. So this universal group will have 3 global groups as a member now. Then we'll add this universal group as a member of domain local group in east.contoso.com. And then we'll add this universal group as a member of domain local group in west.contoso.com. So this universal group now is the member of domain local group on west.contoso.com and east.contoso.com. And the last step would be to configure permissions on HR reports folder to the domain local group in west.contoso.com and configure permission on HR data folder to the domain local group in the east.contoso.com. So we are not giving permissions to the universal group. Instead, we are giving permissions to the domain local group on say HR reports and HR data folder. So as we have seen earlier, that domain local groups are the main purpose of a domain local group is to give permissions to local resources. And this strategy is called as AGUDLP. So accounts goes to global groups goes to universal groups goes to domain local groups, and we assign permissions to domain local groups. So we are going to discuss this group strategies, group nesting, best practices in our next video. So let us focus on changing Active Directory groups scope and type. So can we change group scope and group type? Yes, you can change the Active Directory group scopes or type. Okay, but again, there are some conditions over here. So you can convert a global security group to a universal group if the group is not a part of any other global group. You can convert a domain local group into a universal group if another domain local group is not a part of that particular group. A universal group can be converted to a domain local group without any restrictions. And a universal group can be transformed into a global one if it does not contain any other universal group. So these are the four conditions to say convert or change group type and group scope. So let's look at the summary. So we have scope, membership and permissions, and we have domain local group, global group and universal groups. So scope limited to its own domain, global scope is entire forest, and universal scope again is entire forest. Membership for domain local group can contain objects from any domain, can contain global groups from any domain, and can contain universal groups from any domain. But the membership of a global group can contain accounts from the same domain, and it can contain groups, say global groups from the same domain, and so on and so forth. So let's look at the permissions. Permissions can only be assigned to members inside that particular domain for domain local group. For global groups, permissions can be assigned in any domain, and universal group permissions can be assigned in any domain or any other forest as well. Let's look at member of domain local group. Okay, cannot be a member of say global group, man. A domain local group cannot be a member of global group. Global group can be made a member of domain local group to share respective access resources, and universal group can be a member of any group type in the entire Active Directory forest. So we have already seen converted to, and let's look at forest wide replication. As we know that universal groups are present or are published in global catalog, so universal groups are replicated on every domain controller who is a global catalog in the entire forest. So hope you have enjoyed today's session. Thanks for joining again, and if you think this channel is helping you to learn anything new, please subscribe and share this video with your technical community. and have a great day.